kind of just kick it off in just looking at it for the sport as a product in itself. And we're both sport fans, and I love all sports and playing and watching. And the thing that sets rugby league apart is how fast paced it is, the continuity of it, and which is like a massive difference from other American sports, especially where there's so much stoppage due to, I guess, the commercialization of the sport, and kind of you just kind of milk every fucking attention time that you have on the sport by chucking in all these ads. And also the physicality of this of rugby league. So yeah, I said three things: fast pace, along with continuity, physicality, and then the third thing is frequency of scoring. I really like its frequency of scoring, where it's not
Just right.
happening all the time like in basketball, or hardly ever like in soccer. So it's just like every sort of 10 minutes or so generally, there is some sort of scoring activity, and kind of keeps you engaged at the right level. So yeah,
And
that's
that's why the scores are so epic, like for the context of the game and so memorable, right? Yeah, just to add to that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's what really makes it special, and like as a sport in itself. And then there's all these other shit surrounding it, like the cultural
Tri-
aspects.
Tribalism, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, tribalism, all the rivalry, and like the epitome of that is state of origin. So, Boz.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, I'll give the brief spiel again. So basically when I immigrated here, yeah, grew up in Campsie, Canterbury, so we'll get that now. Just that's important because Canterbury Bankstown is a massive, massive Sydney club. Okay, massive. All right, which is obviously the Bulldogs, Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, massive Sydney club. Heaps of history, yada yada. So I grew up there, and I was always that D head, that idiot that always wanted to go for the other team. Like I never wanted to follow the crowd, like out of spite, sort of thing, like non-conformist bullshit. And then like everyone obviously goes for the dogs in the area, and I just didn't like that, so I wanted to go for someone else. And then Brisbane Broncos were like one of the most epic teams of that era, like Brisbane Broncos and Canberra Raiders, right? We can whittle off the names, but everyone knows. And then I just liked the Broncos because of the style they played, and there was a very some players that I really fell in love with, that made me fall in love with the game, right? Obviously Darren Lockyer, Alfie Langer being the two big ones from that scene. And then yeah, basically I started following from '97, which is actually the Super League year. Like I mean, I knew about it before, like as a kid, but I really started following the Broncos from '97 because I remember it because that was a Super League year, and then we won it, and then it led to '98, which was the combined competition, which we won it, and then that sort of really started. Ironically, '98 was against Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, grand final win, and then it started it off, and then we won in 2000 again, and then obviously we're against the Roosters, and these are big powerhouse clubs, and then yeah, that's sort of where the love happened, and then naturally we started following Queensland because back then, not so much now. That's the funny thing. This
One
team,
Bronco.
this upcoming one Bronco, exactly. Back then, we're talking 11. I think at one stage 11 Broncos. But certainly at some times, it was generally like five Broncos minimum. 5 to 7, 5 to 8 for a long, long time.
Yeah, and just to
So
just
yeah.
to give more context to that, so this is a team. Well, this is a sport where there's 13 players aside on the field, and then four on the bench. So a 17 player team, and then there's 16 clubs in the competition. So amongst that, to have one club represented as many as 11 players is fucking insane. So yeah.
Yeah, and which doesn't happen anymore. So that's
No.
how dominant the Brisbane Broncos were, and how small Queensland were as well at the time. And it's hard not to, and like doesn't mean like, people will be like, oh, you're an asshole who goes for Queensland and live in New South Wales. I'm not. I don't have to defend myself, but I'm not one of those fans. It's just hard to not go for that team as a kid when all your players that you go for on a weekly basis are playing for that team. And also, I started to genuinely hate the Blues because of that, and then it manifested more hating the Blues, and then really getting passionate for that Queensland team. But also, and I know this may sound like a bloody write-off, but honestly, I really like what the Queensland team represents, like which is like for the people, underdog, like down and out, and that's been the theme pretty much since day one, and that's what it's all been all about. Beat the talent, you're the underdog, and that sort of
Real
working class
yeah.
spirit. Yeah, yeah, when we're like Blues have always been the talented team or whatever. And I know that's obviously we're going to talk about the errors and whatnot. But yeah, that's sort of my background to rugby league and obviously state of origin. I could talk about the Broncos for a long, long, long time, but as in for state of origin, that's sort of how it all sort of began. And in my defense, in high school, we were getting fucking swatted. And I
Yeah,
stood
yeah, yeah.
loyal. And like, yeah, like,
Let's pause there.
yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
I think maybe we should talk about Origin itself. Um, okay, so I'll first give my part in terms of my induction into rugby league. I moved over here in '96, and I've always loved sport, and rugby league happened to be on TV, and started watching this thing, and I fell in love with a single player, and his name was Wendell Sailor, and this big black dude who was like super strong and super fast. He was like the first of his own breed. And he would just go around like killing everyone. So I started like just watching this guy all the time. And he obviously played for the Broncos. And that's how I got into the team Broncos. And like Bod said, because Broncos represented the Queensland team so much, it was just a natural kind of inclination. And then once you kind of start watching the team, following the team, and then your heart kind of stays with them. So that's what
Yeah,
happened.
you fall in love with the team. Yeah.